first of all, hi, and thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview about your new album. And it's nice to be talking to you guys again. How are you guys doing? How have you been since the last album?
Ladies first.
Oh, thank you. We've been great, thank you. We went for a tour after the album, and then been working on this one. What else have we been doing?
Yeah, we're touring with Leaves, Ice, Sirenia, and Forever Still right before the COVID situation kind of spread in the end of 2019. But yeah, right after the tour, I started writing music, and here we are. So basically, for me, the lockdown was a good thing, because I had to lock myself into the studio and compose. So, so something good out of it. But yeah, we've been good.
And lucky enough to stay healthy.
Yeah. And of course, the overall situation is like super unfortunate and bad, but I'm such a hippie that I think at some point it will ease up and we'll get back to the normal life, so to say.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. I think things should be normalized again, or back to normal, hopefully, in some months at least. But anyway, talking about your tour, sharing the stage with kind of such important bands in your genre, did that give you some more inspiration perhaps to start writing this album as well?
No, I don't think so. It was the same on the previous album too, when we were touring with Kalmah and Northgard and Here Tour. I don't think it has to do with the kind of course I get inspiration when playing live and playing to the audience and seeing fans. That's super inspiring, and then you just, when you get home, you want to do it again, but with new songs. So I think that's some kind of what gives the spark to the overall process. And of course, like Leaves, Ice, and Sirenia and Forever Still, super nice guys, and we had such fun times on tour. So you kind of get the good vibes out of it, and then you want to kind of let your artistic flow to the motion when you get back home. So.
Well, so far you've released 3 singles, I think. How has the feedback been so far? Have you gotten a lot of positive comments?
Yeah, a lot, like surprisingly lots.
Yeah, we were a bit worried, for example, with Souffrir, because it's such a long song, but still people seem to enjoy it, and also the video. And
yeah, and especially I think when we kind of started to think about singles, and Anne said that Souffrir shouldn't be a single at all, because it's super complicated to kind of make a music video or any kind of graphics to it.
Yeah, it's so epic. Like, I was thinking, how on earth, what to come up with that? We don't have millions of budgets to put in it, so what to do? But then they pushed, it should be done, and we did it.
Yeah.
And then, well, Waves, it's not either a very short song, but that's a thing, because we it would be awful to think that we have to compose like 3-minute songs, 5 minutes top, and have to squeeze into that, because the compositions should be able to live their own lives, and if a composition needs a certain part, it should be put there.
Yeah, there's something wrong with me, because I don't know how to make short songs, but I think that's my style and our style. So, but yeah, the overall response has been really good, especially with the latest single Varjo. It's been like super inspiring to see like huge different kind of people vibing to
yeah,
the song.
And people liking it, even though they might not even understand the lyrics. So.
Yeah. Is it for you different to kind of release a Finnish single than whereas you can maybe think something like that people might not understand it or something? Does it make you more nervous in a way?
I think Yeah, a bit, and especially because it's a totally different kind of song than the rest of the album, which was kind of not nervous, but I think we were like looking forward to how the response would be, but it turned out really well, so we're happy.
For the music video, you also had a piano in the field or something like that. Was it difficult to get it there?
A bit, yeah. But we're glad that there's now one people more in our band, so there were 4 people carrying it now, so it wasn't that bad because we got the car quite near where we had to drop off the piano.
Yeah, we were quite close to the road.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the piano is still there.
Are you ever going to retrieve it? Or
yes, but we were actually thinking about burning it in the video, but then there was this
forest fire warning.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
we wouldn't want to risk that. So
Yeah,
and in the end, I think it wouldn't even.
Yeah, I that would have been just too much.
Yeah. It would be quite weird after the song, like, what the fuck? Why?
yeah. Anyway,
Maybe we can do that another time.
Yeah.
I mean, if it stays there, you know, like you can burn it anytime you want, basically.
Yeah. Juhannus bonfire.
People often say that during a third album, bands get to experiment more and maybe define their sound a little bit more than usual. And that's kind of the album that kind of defines the whole style as a general. But do you feel like this was the album for you that kind of has your sound changed a little bit in that perspective? Do you feel like you were able to experiment a little bit more?
Yeah, I guess so in some sense, but I think we've been doing it on each album.
Yeah,
too.
because you always try to challenge yourself.
Yeah, and kind of change something, evolve. And now the thing was that we worked with the mixing. We worked with Juhi Skaupinen, the singer of Merta, who has his own studio and does a lot of mixing. And I haven't worked with him before, and I thought that at first I thought that he's a bit too modern for me, his sound, I mean, but it turned out he basically can do anything. So it was super kind of fresh to work with him, and the mastering was done by Daniel Hagström in Finvox, who I understood works mostly on electronic music, but nowadays with metal too, thanks to Juhis. But yeah, in some sense, we always want to kind of challenge ourselves and evolve the sound, and I think it's going to be the same on the next album too, and kind of to keep things fresh for ourselves too.
Yeah, to me, it felt like this album was maybe a bit more atmospheric or something like that in comparison to the previous one. And the previous one was maybe a little bit more straightforward in a way or something. What are your thoughts about that?
I think you're right, because on the first album we made the same kind of thing, that every song is knit together with soundscapes and stuff like that. And on the second album, the soundscapes weren't there. And it was more kind of straightforward thing. And now we kind of went back to the soundscapes things. Well, from the very beginning, I started kind of implement those to the demos already, and overall the water element. And
he brainwashed me.
Yeah, like, can you hear? Yeah, there's water in there. But yeah, I like to kind of have the atmospheric type of thing there too. That it should be, in my opinion, listened to as a whole, the whole album. Of course, most people won't do it. Especially, it's hard when you kind of drop singles here and there. But But for me, it's the whole album that should be the theme.
Yeah.
Old school, maybe.
What I also felt was that the vocals are kind of doing something else in this record as well, or at least for me in comparison to The Wasteland, of course. Was there something you guys did differently while singing, or did you just do the same as usual?
Well, at least, for example, in Shine, me and Emily, our vocals are kind of equal, and they're are like a duet almost, and we're crossing each other. So that was something new we did.
Yeah. That was actually fun. Should do that more.
I don't even remember. It was some indie folk pop duo that the inspiration came from there.
Yeah. No,
I can't remember. I have to check out which band that was. But yeah, that was new. I think I had a bit less aggression in my song style. Because I feel like on this album, Lilian is getting more cynical. She's not maybe as pissed off as on the previous album, but more cynical. So I try to implement that in my singing as well. What else?
I think overall, I think we're slowly growing more into the characters as well, because of course this is the third album already, and now we kind of know what we've done and what we want to experiment. And it's because we don't do much of vocal demos or stuff like that. We just start doing and recording, and then the good parts stay. And so we kind of work together. On this album, I think we recorded more things like when we were all the three vocalists in the studio at the same time. So we were like, okay, Anna, you go now, and me and Emily will listen and kind of throw ideas and stuff like that. So but yeah, it's kind of difficult to say, because in that sense, we too want to kind of experiment and evolve the things, so and take things forward to some direction.
You mentioned the characters, of course. People who follow you and know your music know that these albums have stories, of course. So what can you tell fans about the story this time around?
Well, I would say the first album gives a kind of scratch on the whole. It's like a summary of a whole story. And the Wasteland album is the opening chapter that explains what happens before we get into the gray realms. And now we're somewhere around the river that is mentioned also in the previous albums. And there we're kind of learning more about the characters, Lilian, Patrick, and Odessa, who are the main characters on all these albums. Of course, river, well, the water element, I was thinking originally this album could have been called The River, but then again, because I also love the ocean, and probably sailing is more common in the ocean than in a river, so then it could be any water, and from there came again this Under the Surface, which both deals with the water element, the physical water element, and also that we learn more about the characters and dive in or under their surface as well. And hopefully also we dive under the listener's surface a bit.
Yeah, that's well put. Yeah.
So what I also recognize in the music, for instance, in Souffrir, but also in some other tracks, is that you also drew some influence from circus music or something like that. And it reminded me kind of Cirque du Soleil. They have this performance called Corteo, which was somehow, I felt this vibe as well. But anyway, I was wondering if this was somehow connected to the story, or how did you come up with that kind of music? Does it draw back to your influences from performance arts, for instance, or how do you?
Well, that has always been there. Thus, theatrical metal, and I think back in 2013 when we started the band, Harri had this dream of a kind of band almost like a circus entourage, and
yeah, and it's I've got some kind of perversion, that kind of twisted circus kind of thing, but I think especially with Souffrir it was that it originated on the very first lockdown, and I kind of felt that okay, this is kind of feels a bit absurd that this hasn't happened since the Finland was fighting a war. Like it's been a bit of a long time ago that we've had a lockdown, and my sister lives 30 kilometers from my house, and I was like, okay, I cannot go there because it's a different region, and I'm not allowed to travel there. And I was like, oh, what the fuck? And again, another lockdown in the studio. I was like playing with the weird theme.
Yeah, the working title was Quarantine.
Yeah.
For the song.
So that kind of gave me the spark to kind of create something absurd and twisted at the same time, as well as maybe scary. Yeah.
Like the circus nightmare, maybe.
Yeah.
What came first this time around? Did you write music first, or did you come up with the backstory of the characters first?
Well, of course, when planning the first album, I kind of tried to draw the edges of the story and the characters already back then, so that whatever would happen in the future, I would still have that groundwork done. On the previous album, I think I had written more text and planned more in advance before Harri started composing, and that became problematic because what I wrote and what he composed didn't match. So for this album, I tried to keep the pages blank and just see what would come with the songs. And it was sometimes really difficult, sometimes it was relieving because I already have the backstory in my mind, so it was just like for example, Stardust Part 1, it almost wrote itself, but then there were other songs that were more difficult to write.
Yeah, but I think that's the usual case, and especially with Varjo, that Anne kind of struggled with maybe 6 months or so because she tried to write it in English, and
I tried to force it in the Lost in Grey or the Grey Realms world, and it didn't fit there. So I already told Harri we should leave it out. I asked Emily to write it, and then eventually I just embraced the fact that, okay, this wants to be a lullaby in Finnish. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Lilian, Odessa, and Patrick, but it has to be there. And then, again, there's a song.
Yeah.
What was the?
But yeah, I think mostly I wrote the music first.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah. What was that? Was there a specific moment that made you realize what you had to do with that song?
Deadline. Because Emily still hadn't written anything, and the mixing was getting closer and closer. So it was like, okay, I need to do this now, and I still feel it should be in Finnish and that it should be a lullaby. So then I did that. It was maybe one evening.
Yeah, something like that. Super fast.
And it was such a cathartic feeling for me. It was a relief because I had been struggling with it so much. So afterwards, I just cried. It was like, oh, I had poured my soul again into this. And
yeah.
How do you look back to the song now? Are you happy with the end result and the positive reactions it's gotten, despite the stress it caused you?
Definitely.
Yeah, I think it's for me it's the huge part of the overall creative process, because you're struggling with the songs or lyrics or compositions or something like that so much. And when you get it finished and you can listen to it after a short while after the mixing, when your ears are new again, and then when you listen to the album you can be like, okay, it turned out really good after all the struggles, and it's a big part of the overall thing.
Yeah, the process is always so interesting.
Yeah.
And because there are some things you just can't plan ahead, it just happens.
Yeah, and especially at least for me this time, the actual recordings were super fun too, because we had got 2 new members in the band and like fresh new blood and like more energy in the whole process. So it was super fun in that way too.
Is that something that also you learn to kind of let go of that, having a plan and something, or are there any other lessons you learned from creating this album?
Well, maybe that now maybe I trust my intuition better, because sometimes like I have this feeling that it should be done in a certain way, then I try to do it in 10 different ways and then eventually go back to the original idea. That's one thing.
I think I have the same regarding compositions. We're much more intuitive workers now, which is super fun, because that way the music should be. Planning on doing a certain kind of art is not maybe our thing.
Yeah.
Of course we can plan kind of rough edges, like Anne said, that I think she had something like 5 albums on the first album. Like,
yeah,
okay.
Well, it was back when I thought that our ideas would match better, but now it might be 10 albums to get the story done.
Yeah, which is not bad. We've got all the time in the world. So,
do you guys have any plans for? I mean, of course, we're not really sure what's going to happen now, but do you guys have any plans for some shows, or maybe this summer even?
Well, not for this summer, but we're kind of looking for possibilities for autumn and early winter, and of course planning on doing maybe a tour next year if that's possible, and really hoping so, because there has been a lot of questions if we are going to be back on Europe again, and we really hope so. So
let's hope for the best.
Yeah. But I think we're just not going to stress about the situation and enjoy the summer.
Yeah, anyway, that's it for my questions. Do you have any last thoughts you want to share with your fans?
Yes, but because there's always someone who has said everything better than yourself. So now I want to read a quote from, how do you pronounce Les Miserables? That is also in the song Souffrir, but in French. So the English text is like this. If the soul is left in darkness, sins will be committed. The guilty one is not he who commits the sin, but he who causes the darkness.